How we doing, everybody? It's Tyler Ward, a.k.a. Wardy. Many of you guys know me here on YouTube, and we're back at it with our latest Straight Outta Flushing Mets podcast segment here for the New York Post Sports YouTube channel, live from Citi Field as the Mets take down the New York Yankees in Game 2 of their three-game set for a Subway Series matchup by a final score tonight of 6-3. This was a resilient victory for the New York Mets, a day removed from Clay Holmes now being out, not for the entire season, according to Mets skipper Carson Benge, but obviously going to be out for at least the next number of months, to say the least. Now, the Mets without Clay Holmes, and after faltering this past night in Game 1 of their matchup against the New York Yankees, they're looking off to get to the right foot in any which way means possible. And for the Yankees, against this Mets team with Oscar Brosman as a spot starter, David Pearson coming in the second inning, they were able to pounce early as the Yankees initially took a 1-0 lead in this ball game, but it wasn't long before the Mets were able to bounce back, and it had a lot to do with bad fundies by those New York Yankees. Carlos Rodon with an absolutely botched throw that we saw to home, not necessarily at home, but obviously just trying to make a throw. It didn't happen. 2 runs would come in and score. The Mets take a 2-1 lead, and they never look back. And the reason why they never look back is because of heroics from guys like Mark Vientos, who had himself quite the productive day for the New York Mets, driving in a pair of runs when they most certainly needed it. Give credit where credit's due. Mark Vientos especially is someone who really up until this past homestand has not done anything of great substance at home for the New York Mets this year. On the road, when we look especially in that San Francisco Giants series weeks ago where he batted .500, absolutely. When you look at what he did in the most recent road trip for the New York Mets, absolutely. But when looking at this now homestand, we're seeing Mark Vientos get more and more comfortable at the plate, and that's a great thing for a Mets lineup. It did not just stop with Mark Vientos, as Brett Baty was also unbelievably productive for the New York Mets. Between Baty and Vientos, 2 guys that have still been trying to establish themselves as true everyday players for the Mets. Not that they haven't been in there every day, but obviously just coming in to be productive the way that they would most certainly like to be. You know, between Vientos having the 3 RBIs, I apologize if I said it's 2, and obviously Baty driving in a run as well. That was great and all. But really, the biggest standout out of this entire ballgame wasn't just David Pearson across 4 solid innings, just allowing a pair of runs. In my opinion, it's Luke Weaver. Okay, we're talking about a bases-loaded circumstance in the 7th inning after Brooks Raley was not able to get the job done for consecutive innings. Okay, initially looked good, then he not so much. And because Raley had that really bad jam, bases loaded, the Mets were only up by a couple runs at that point. Carson Benge drops the ball on right in a very historic Metsian Yankees matchup fashion, if you guys know what I'm referencing. Thankfully, it didn't have the same outcome for the New York Mets, as we would see not only Luke Weaver come in sprinting to the mound as he was so amped up to play against and pitch against his former club of the New York Yankees. He works 2 quick 0-2 counts on the next opposing batters for the Yankees. He gets back-to-back strikeouts, and then he gets a ground out for a 1-2-3, getting out of that jam unscathed with bases loaded to not only keep the Mets in the lead, but ultimately to prevail in this ball game. We also saw Carson Benge, while he did drop that ball in right field, he had himself a fantastic day as the plate setter for this New York Mets team at the top of their line. And it's not just Luke Weaver as a huge standout facing his former club tonight. We know that the New York Mets have a laundry list of former New York Yankees in this Subway Series matchup, whether it's someone like Luis Torrens, who the Mets obviously acquired a couple years ago for $100,000, just cash considerations there from the Yankees a couple seasons ago when the Mets were in dire need of catching help then. Fast forward a couple years later, they're still in dire need of catching help now with Alvarez out for the next couple months, unfortunately. But it's the big guns for the New York Mets. And let's start with the one and only Juan Soto, okay? Juan Soto had himself his 3rd stolen bag tonight. He also got himself on base multiple times, including a multi-hit game against his former club. The big standout tonight as well is between Juan Soto facing a veteran southpaw that he knows well in Carlos Rodon, and also just being such an elite hitter at the plate that no matter the matchup, whether you're facing a dominant lefty, soft-tossing lefty, a flamethrower, or someone on the right side, either way, Juan Soto is essentially going to have the exact kind of approach at the plate. And for Juan, obviously he missed 2+ weeks of play with the New York Mets due to injury this season, is really trying to get himself and the New York Mets in the flow of things in the best way possible. Listen, the Mets are still well below .500. We all know this. They're not 10 games below .500 anymore, but they still have a lot more chipping away to do, as if I'm not mistaken, they're around 7 games or so at this point of us talking right now, and they can take the series finale. They can obviously get to right around that 6-game range and go on from there and really see if somehow, some way, they can get themselves to 500 ball. But in order to get themselves to 500 ball, they're going to need help from everyone. And it's not just Luke Weaver in the bullpen. It's not just Juan Soto, the X factor every single night offensively, getting on base 2 to 4 times every single night when he's right. It's also who's going to be in the back in your bullpen, your true closer, and that's what Devin Williams did comfortably against his former club in the New York Yankees today. Listen, if you asked any Yankee fan as the offseason began this past year for the Yankees, should we bring Devin Williams back? A laundry list and a large majority of people will go out of their way to say, no, we should not bring him back. Okay, Devin Williams was not all that great in the first half, adjusting to a big market last year for the New York Yankees, and he said it himself in his end-of-season presser with the Yanks. They actually grew to love New York and really felt he settled in the second half, which he most certainly did. A lot of his expected numbers and peripherals are very much on par with his norm when he's a multi-time Trevor Hoffman award winner as the best reliever in the National League for the Milwaukee Brewers. So we all knew that the talent was always there with Devin Williams. We knew that the changeup was going to be the best in the game as long as it's polished right, and he's not looking obviously a little scared or a little frigid out there on the mound because he actually has the comfortability of getting adjusted to New York. So that painted the picture for the New York Mets to make that signing for Devin Williams entering the season. And while Devin has not necessarily been his absolute sharpest to begin the year for the New York Mets, we have most certainly seen him really settle down over his past number of outings now. Now not only has Devin found that consistency in his game when the Mets most certainly need it in the back end of their bullpen, but again, if the Mets get anywhere this year, if they find any stability when it comes to getting to 500 ball and potentially prevailing and getting above that, the only way to truly make anything of this season is to make sure you have these levels of consistency from your highest output players. So between Devin Williams, obviously in the closer role, in which you know that you need him to be your guy every single time out there for the most part, again, the airbender for a reason, Juan Soto, the $765 million man, for a reason, even though that he's not a former Yankee. Bo Bichette falls in that category as he has still been an obvious glaring hole in this New York Mets lineup, even while he's still batting in the 2 or 3 spot, whatever the case may be. Again, Bo's making $42 million this year gross. Hopefully he can live up to somewhat of that contract before it's too little too late for the New York Mets, as he will then inevitably opt back into that contract if, say, he doesn't perform at all to his liking throughout the entirety of this 162. But the point here again is there a level of optimism to be a Mets fan with what's going on with tonight's victory? Sure, but in order to increase that optimism and to really being something that you can buy into as a fan, you got to find the consistency, you got to have the balance of their game, and from a rotation that obviously is depleted, they're going to be relying on their youngsters now more than ever. It'll be really interesting to see how the Mets go about the loss of Clay Holmes, what's going on with guys like if they're going to consider a call-up to a Zach Thornton, are they going to consider a Jonathan, a Jack Weniger, someone along those lines. So if they find the balance of the rotation, they can get some stability with their offense with the high flyers and Carson Benge and A.J. Ewing, and obviously you have the big guns and Juan Soto, Devin Williams, and everyone else in company doing their thing. Maybe, just maybe, this New York Mets season is not all on lost after all. Overall, the Mets did exactly what they needed to do, find themselves back in the win column, rebound after a tough deficit yesterday, and losing Clay Holmes, one of their most reliable starters this season. And now they look for the series victory tomorrow for the Mets day game. So you guys can let us know all your thoughts in the comments down below as to what was your biggest takeaway from this Game 2 matchup between the New York Yankees and the New York Mets. Was it what you saw on the offensive front for the New York Mets? Was it Carson Benge with a 3-hit game? Was it other key factors that you guys saw as well? Please let us know, obviously, in the comments down below if you thought pitching was the key takeaway, okay? Were you really impressed with David Pearson today? Did you love what Luke Weaver did the way that I did most certainly as a fan talking about this right now? Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down below. Make sure to subscribe to the New York Post Sports YouTube channel for all things New York Mets, New York Yankees, and all baseball long.